Say hello to the Asus Zenfone 10 and the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V, two underdogs in the world of flagship smartphones. And I think they embody why I love Android. Let's talk about it. Now, before we dive in, I want to make it clear that this video is not sponsored by anyone. What you're watching is simply my opinion after looking at a ton of phones in the past year and a half I've been running this channel. So, my favorite thing about Android has to be the sheer variety of devices available to choose from. If you have specific needs or wants out of a smartphone, odds are there's an Android device that fits the bill. You have your high-end jack-of-all-trades options like the S23 Ultra that packs tons of features and performance in one package. You also have simplistic mid-range devices like the Pixel 7a that give you the core essentials at an affordable price. And then there are alternative form factors. I've spent a lot of time dailying the Z Fold 4 and even had the chance to try out clever prototypes like the Moto Riser foldable concept. If you want to watch a video on that later, I'll drop a link in the description below. But regardless, Android offers an incredible amount of flexibility. And for this video specifically, I cherry-picked the Zenfone 10 and Xperia 1 Mark V because they are made for two very specific types of people. Let's start with the Zenfone 10, which was literally just announced a few days ago. It's a direct sequel to last year's Zenfone 9 and improves on that phone's successful formula. Take the latest and greatest hardware available in 2023, cram all of it into the smallest chassis Asus can make, and the end result is a proper flagship smartphone that anyone can comfortably hold with one hand. With a 5.9-inch display and the whole thing weighing at a mere 172 grams, if you happen to be someone that doesn't like the current meta of humongous phones, this device is for you. Now, size is one thing, but I genuinely love the fit and finish of its design. The lightly beveled edge of the display that flows from the aluminum frame and into the sandstone-like polycarbonate back, it's beautiful and confidence inspiring. Expiring? Whew, I'm gonna be expiring in a second. Poof! I'm gone! Poof! Polycarbonate back is beautiful and confidence inspiring. Inspiring! All of this makes the feel in hand solid and grippy, a good balance between function and form. But really, the strong suit of the Zenfone 10 is its performance because you get a lot of it. With a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, as well as 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage on this particular test unit, it can handle demanding tasks like gaming just as well as its bigger-boned competitors. Bigger-boned competitors, Jesus, what the f is this script? Big-boned. Great way to describe phones, Ken.
Ooh, self-burn. Those are rare.
Understandably, it does get a bit warm under heavy load, though if there's any compromise with a smaller footprint, it will be thermal performance. However, complementing its gaming prowess is the Zenfone 10's high refresh rate display. For normal use, you can set it to 120 Hz, though in gaming, it can go up to 144. It's nice to see on the screen, especially because it's gorgeous to look at given the pixel density and its 1100 nit peak brightness. What's equally impressive is the battery life. We're talking 4,300 milliamp hours of capacity, which relative to the Zenfone 10 size is remarkable. It was good for a whole day of use, which entailed browsing social media, watching video, and burst gaming sessions here and there. And it charges quicker than other small phones I've tried, like the Pixel 7. That phone in particular tops out at 23 watts, where the Zenfone 10 will top out at 30 over USB-C and will also wirelessly charge at 15 watts. Even the cameras are pretty good. The main 50 megapixel shooter takes great photos, but its killer feature is a gimbal-like video mode. Asus actually had this in the Zenfone 9 last year, but it's even smoother this time around. With a mix of optical and electronic image stabilization, by default, the phone is able to compensate for anything from micro vibrations to actual running shots. The more it has to stabilize, the more it will have to crop into the sensor, which can compromise quality depending on the situation. However, for literal run and gun scenarios, this can be quite handy. Oh, and it also has a headphone jack as well. What a novel concept. All of this for the same price as last year's phone, which started at $699 here in the US, which is competitive as heck for what you're getting. So, small phones are definitely niche, shout out to Carl Pei, but if these aren't your particular cup of tea and you're one to go super nerdy and in the weeds, then take a look at this, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V. Sony knows that it's difficult to go up against the Apples and Samsungs of the world, so it's focusing on what it does best, and that is cameras. While this phone is spec'd like a real flagship, sporting a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, 12 gigs of RAM, and a headphone jack, this phone is all about being a content creator's best friend, whether it's for stills, video, or even live streaming. You can see it in the low-key simple design that's grippy and easy to hold, and it even has, get this, a dedicated two-step shutter button just like on a real camera. Plus, at that, it also has serious camera hardware. There is a 48 megapixel main shooter, 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 12 megapixel telephoto with actual optical zoom, all of which can film 4K 120 frames per second video for consistency across the focal range. Included on this phone's mostly stock build of Android are apps that allow you to dial in shots the way you want. For example, still photographers with the Camera Pro app can access stuff like ISO, shutter, and white balance controls, but also have various metering options, picture profiles, autofocus modes, and display information, much like Sony's dedicated camera products. Same goes for video. You get manual control basically over everything to make your phone like a dedicated camcorder. Though unlike your dad's Handycam, the Video Pro app lets you live stream over cellular or Wi-Fi to any platform that'll ingest over RTMP, such as Twitch or YouTube. Especially with the growing popularity of IRL streaming, this can be a pretty handy tool. Additionally, the Xperia can record or stream your screen while gaming and will even give you a picture-in-picture window so that your audience can see your face while playing. And if you're actually a cinematographer, Sony includes a whole other app specifically for that, which has video goodies, including the ability to shoot with Venice color signs, something that typically is reserved for Sony's Pro Video products. But best of all, while Xperia phones have always had these features over the last few years, this is the first year that Sony is leaning on computational photography to enhance image quality. You see, despite Sony making the industry's favorite photo sensors, stuff shot on Xperia never quite hit in a meaningful way compared to other smartphones that also straight up use Sony's sensors. All of the manual controls you get are cool and all, but it can only do so much in the context of phone cameras. These days, you need good software processing in addition to the hardware in order to stand out. And this year's Xperia 1 finally does it. It even has a night mode for good low light performance. And the result is that photos and video look absolutely amazing across the board. Whether it's optics, color, or detail, this camera is now a more well-rounded package for those that actually care. Now, it's not all rainbows and sunshine, however. While I've grown to love the variety of phones available on the Android side of the fence, there are some glaring downsides to look out for. With how many manufacturers there are in this space, it's hard to find consistency industry-wide for things that users actually look out for. For example, Sony and Asus trail behind other brands when it comes to their Android update policy, where Samsung commits to 4 major OS upgrades and 5 years of security, ASUS will only support their phones through 2 OS updates and 4 years of security. And don't even get me started with Sony, which is miles worse. We're talking the bare minimum, which is 2 upgrades and 3 years of patches, which is very unfortunate for those that are looking into these devices for long-term ownership. It don't feel great when the Xperia 1 Mark V costs a whopping $1,400. We can only hope that these policies get better down the line, but if these devices fit your particular needs, it might be worth the trade-off. But let me know, what do you think in the comments below? And otherwise, thanks for watching this video on Denki channel.